living in Los Angeles for 6 months, and the dating scene had been living up to its bad reputation with a vengeance. Between a director who broke down in tears over drinks as he confessed that he was still in love with an uneducated stripper, to an actor-turned-activist who responded to my coffee invitation text with, and I quote, "You are part of the 99%, and you will be with us wherever you go." My adolescent whim of joining a nunnery was becoming less of a whim and more of a game plan by the minute. So when Jake, my old college friend, whom I hadn't seen since college, suggested that we catch up over dinner, I found myself observing him in a whole new light. I had never thought of Jake as boyfriend potential back at Northwestern, and not just because he was about 6 inches shorter than me. He was funny, he'd walk me home from class sometimes, there was a drunken dance party in his fraternity house involving hats, but he was a friend, and just a friend. But now, 7 years later, things had changed. For one thing, he now wore glasses. Glasses were a good look for him. They added maturity and intellect. For another, he asked me to meet him at some 5-star restaurant in Beverly Hills where we got treated royally and stuffed with food because he was now a food critic. Let me tell you something. When you've been a starving actor for most of your 20s, there is little more compelling than the experience of looking down at your plate to see a bleeding steak that costs as much as your twice-owned IKEA couch, followed by the words, "It's on the house." I think Jake grew about a foot taller based on the comp to ribeye alone. Finally, after a casual Google search prior to our dinner non-date, I learned another tasty tidbit about Jake. He wrote a food-themed dating column. This was background check gold. As I skimmed through his past articles, I learned that he had just gotten out of a long-term relationship, fancied himself a romantic, and was looking for the real thing. He was the LA male version of a unicorn. And this unicorn was getting taller by the minute. Our conversation at dinner revealed that he really did want all of those things. And the more free wine I drank, the more sold I became on the idea that Jake could be the Judd Apatow to my Leslie Mann, the Sonny to my Cher, the George Costanza to my Marissa Tomei. Why hadn't I seen it before? He was funny, charming, and most of all, a good guy. He had a dog and a small house. And because we had been friends years before, I felt like I could trust him. If I had been uncertain about jumping into a relationship with Jake, he was practically on a mission over the next few weeks to sell me on the idea. He popped into my neighborhood and treated me to a burger. He left flowers by my gate. He wrote me witty emails with puns galore. He braved rush hour traffic from the west side and arrived punctually to pick me up for our dates. It's like I was dating a non-neurotic Woody Allen with the skill set of Hitch. We were living a romantic comedy and I was sold. About a month into dating, Jake told me that he had to go out of town for a work trip. Apparently, in addition to writing about food, he also got paid to stay at luxury resorts and write about them. That detail, combined with everything I previously mentioned, made Jake practically tower over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the height category. He told me that he was going off the radar for about a week, but that he couldn't wait to see me when he got back. And sure enough, he called me as he deplaned at LAX and said he wanted to get together post-haste. He took me to a lovely dinner and told me things that Nora Ephron would be jealous she hadn't come up with. And then he asked me to spend his birthday with him. At this point, I was all in. I told him to come by my house early so I could treat him to a birthday dinner. I got a deep dish pizza as an homage to our Chicago days. I learned how to make his favorite drink, and I tied helium-filled balloons to the chairs in my backyard. I was the love child of Martha Stewart and Meg Ryan. But when Jake opened my gate and took in the scene, I could tell right away that something was wrong. I racked my brain. Were the balloons too much? Surely not for Jewish Hugh Grant. We sat down, and Jake said, so, we haven't really talked about if we're seeing other people or not, but FYI, I am. Specifically one other person. And when I went on that work trip, it was actually a romantic getaway with her, but that's cool, right? This is the part of the story where you are going to be blown away by my grace and understanding and general level of coolness. Just kidding, I had a fucking meltdown. If Jake, the good guy with a house and a dog who knew me better than almost anyone in LA at that point, was a lying cheater with a secret girlfriend, who could I ever trust? I nearly checked myself into the convent down the street. But instead, I wiped my tears, silently thanked myself for not sleeping with him, and told Jake that I couldn't keep things going when there was another girl in another city who was also, I'm assuming, all in like I was. I explained to him that the past month had made me realize that I really was looking for the real thing, and despite my desire to be a generous human being, in this case, it wasn't in my nature to share. When Jake left, I took a pair of scissors and cut the strings of his birthday balloons, watching them peacefully drift away into the night sky. I tried not to think about the fact that they would soon wither and deflate and probably end up polluting a marsh somewhere. Instead, I imagined that one of them might casually land on the plate of some other deceptive scumbag at an outdoor barbecue, and that he would unwittingly choke on a bite of potato salad and cheap rubber. That made me feel better. What also made me feel better, strangely enough, was dropping by Jake's actual birthday party that weekend. I know what you're thinking. Why did you go? I don't know. I just felt like it would help me get over it, and sure enough, it did. When I showed up at his house with a six-pack of beer, he looked shorter than ever, and he was playing beer pong, which morphed him from the chariot he had become back into a pumpkin. And in the 30 minutes or so that I was at Jake's party, I met this really cool fairy godmother-like girl named Rachel, who set me up on a date a week later with an actual good guy whom I began dating. A month or so after that, Rachel and I met up for a drink. Jake was such an asshole, Rachel said, and I can't believe what he wrote. Oh shit. I hopped online later that night, and sure enough, there it was, the latest entry in Jake's food-themed dating column, entitled, Dealing with the Dating Two Women Dilemma. Here's a little snippet. In roughly every sitcom ever made, there is inevitably a scene where the leading man gets stuck in a restaurant with two different women that he's either dating, sleeping with, or both. Recently, I ran into some trouble of the sitcom variety. I found myself dating two girls at the same time, and I wasn't ready to write off either of them. So what's a guy to do? The last thing I wanted was to feel like I was keeping secrets from these great girls, but ultimately that's what it felt like, because you were. The first girl was totally cool about it. She's totally cool about pretty much everything, so that didn't come as a surprise. The second girl, however, was not okay with the situation. I don't like to share, she said. I don't like to share? My long, nuanced, emotional explanation of why I couldn't contribute to Jake's amoral romp had been summed up in 5 little words that made me sound like a greedy toddler. He continued, the interesting thing that came out of the situation was that it made me realize how much I liked the first girl. Is anyone surprised by this? She was totally cool, and she probably slept with him. The article ended with a fair warning wrapped up in an ice cream metaphor. The whole thing makes me think about ice cream. You sample some flavors, and when you're ready, you pick the one that you like best. Just be careful around butter pecan. She doesn't like to share. Okay, after I finished the article, I wasn't sure what to do. Should I create an account on his website with the username ButterPecanBabe and write a snarky comment? Should I don't know, share the article on Facebook with the caption, douchebag alert? Should I take the high road and do nothing? yes, I should. And that's what I did. Until things with that girl and Jake inevitably imploded and he emailed me a few months later. I didn't respond to his first, "Hey, how's life?" email, but then he reached out again. "I've tried this before," he wrote. "I know." "But you never responded. How are you? I've been thinking about you a lot lately." Oh, you guys. Ugh, I couldn't resist. "Hi, Jake," I replied. "Life is wonderful, and I have you partially to thank. Soon after your birthday, your amazing friend Rachel introduced me to the most delicious scoop of ice cream, who also doesn't like to share. Thank you."